So I'm hoping that sparked some really good discussion. It's the first part of culture that I want to talk about. So how do we build that culture of joy? And it's going to be an ongoing discussion, but it's just stuff I wanted to sow out there. I wanted to take what is that brilliant research from IHI and say, look, above everything else we do, if we don't get culture right, actually all the other stuff, however good our vision is, however good our strategy, however good our plans, if we don't get culture right, we don't get care right. So the first aspect is culture of joy. The second thing I want to talk about is culture of kindness. So one of the difficult things we had to face up to in the Kirkup inquiry was the PICA survey that came looking at how women in our maternity services here in Morecambe Bay felt when they used our service. And 44% of them said they did not feel treated with kindness or respect. 44%, nearly half the women that came to use our maternity services in the Bay said to us they didn't feel treated with kindness or respect. I have to say, the work that Sasha and Mandy and others have done across maternity in Morecambe Bay is so exemplary, and it's why Sasha's just had the promotion that she's had, because you know what we've learned here? When you take something on the chin and stuff gets exposed and you face up to it and it gets called out and actually you begin to change that dynamic, it's actually amazing. And the PICA surveys now rate us as one of the very best places in the country to have maternity care, and kindness has been turned on its head. And we want that, don't we? Wouldn't it be absolutely disastrous in a place where we're trying to deliver care, that people didn't feel treated with kindness? So how do we develop a culture of kindness? It's become something I've thought a lot about over the last few years. And I've developed what I call my 7 H's of kindness. And the first one is humanity. So we talked about this in Culture of Joy, but it's about that ability to connect as a human being. And I think that happens both within our teams, that you look another person in the eye and just connect with them at a human level, that you open your life and share life and talk about what matters. Every team meeting I have, I start with a point of connection. We do what's called a check-in. My team sits around in a circle and we literally just say, how are you today? What's going on for you? What feels important to you today? What do you love about the person on your left? What do you love about working with the person on your right? What's the best quality about the person sitting opposite you? But how much do we do that? How much do we connect and just build each other up and make sure that, you know, we talk some good over each other? I made a bunch of consultants do it, and it was, honestly, it was one of my favourite mornings I've ever spent. It was like the most awkward environment I've ever been in. It was like, oh, I don't know, I suppose. There's something about learning to be... But it's true, right? And you know, part of it, and this is what I've learned, and I think this is part of leadership, is learning that vulnerability of being willing to sit with the awkwardness, that you know stuff has to change, you know we have to connect, and sometimes it's actually really awful to sit in a circle of people and help them connect or say great things about each other, because it's so easy to find all the reasons you don't like working with someone. And actually, if you learn to sit in a place, you could say, what do you love about the person on your left? And I promise you, it changes everything. Actually, it builds trust, it builds relationship, it builds camaraderie, it builds all the stuff that needs for a team to function, just connecting as human beings and taking time to do that. And we rush around so much. My mom's a nurse. I come from a family of nurses. I know what nursing culture is like in terms of sometimes we're working 13-hour days without even having time to have a wee, and your wee's so concentrated at the end of the day because you're so flipping dehydrated. The thought of connecting with anyone apart from just blooming getting the job done. So how do we do it? We actually have to value it. We have to make space for it. We have to take the time to make sure we're looking in other people's eyes and just building that together. The second thing is humility. And really, for me, humility is found not in just an attitude of, oh, I'm just so rubbish, I've got no skills. Oh, no, you do it, I can't possibly. That's not humility. That's like not knowing who you are or that you've got any skills. Humility for me, is really found in listening to someone enough to be willing to change. I know that I'm not listening to someone if what they're saying isn't actually impacting me or I'm not willing to change as a result. if my hand's already going up like this halfway through the first sentence, or I'm already got my answer in my head, I'm not really listening to what they're saying. And I think there's something for us as leaders and actually just how we do life generally in terms of building a culture. And it's actually particularly true, I think, of how we listen to patients. Patients tell us truths that we do not want to hear, probably every day. Having the humility to listen and be changed by what they're telling us and let that change how we do stuff is absolutely vital. It's listening into action with our staff, but it's listening into action with our patients. And I think that's one of the transformational pieces that came in maternity with the patient stories. And I think it's some work that I'm really passionate about in something called the Poverty Truth Commission, where no decision about me without me is for me. You don't get to stand at the end of my bed and tell me what I need to do with my life. You get to sit and listen to me as a partner in my life and help me, coach me, offer me some suggestions, but you don't get to dictate to me. And you have the humility to listen to what it's like to be me and how it feels like to live my life when I leave this ward. And you can help me and we go on a journey together if I permission that. So it's something about changing our role and understanding our position differently. The third thing for me is honesty. So the third H of building a culture of kindness is honesty. And we talked about that before in Culture of Joy. It's that vulnerability, it's that transparency, but it's also being willing to share truthfully what's going on with our patients. The reality is, over the next 3 years, across Morecambe Bay, we have to save £120 million. Now that kind of money sounds like so ridiculous to most people. We can't even grasp it. What's £120 million look like? None of us are ever going to have that much money unless you suddenly have a great idea and sell it and do brilliant stuff. The problem is that we need to talk about stuff in an honest way with people in a way they can understand. So one of the ways we've developed talking about it is the reality that for every pound we get into Morecambe Bay, we're currently spending £1.20. That means some of the stuff we've been able to provide over the last number of years, we're not going to be able to provide. That is a really, really tough conversation to have, but it's an honest conversation. And what I'm hoping is that by being a bit honest, we actually have a bit of a social movement here in Morecambe Bay about being more healthy and well. So that if we take care of our own health and well-being and become good neighbours and take care of those around us, maybe we all live more healthy and well, and maybe we don't need as much care as we're currently having, and therefore care becomes more affordable again for everyone. There are some tough things for us to talk about, but hiding behind it or trying to dress it up in nice political language isn't going to help us. The public that we serve and the people that we work with aren't stupid. And actually to try and pretend or dress things up nicely for our teams who are under more and more pressure and actually finding resources are more limited, sometimes putting a positive spin on things isn't the best way. Sometimes we just need to be honest about what's happening and then say, and you know what? We don't even have the answers. A guy called John Holloway said, one of the best things we can do right now is recognise we're facing challenges we've never faced before. And therefore, we have to get to a place of humility and honesty that says, let's start with a blank piece of paper. This is the challenge we're facing. And Albert Einstein says, doesn't he, that if you had an hour to save the whole world, he'd spend 55 minutes trying to find out what the question was, and then 5 minutes solving it. And I think so often we're in such a rush to solve the problems. We're like, right, this is going on, right, I'm going to fix it, and this is what we do. And actually sometimes if we were a bit slower to sit back, have an open ear and sit with our teams and say, these are the problems we're facing, I don't have all the answers to fix it. I've got some ideas, but I really want to hear every idea around this team of how we're going to face this together. I think the innovation we build and that culture of kindness and inclusivity is massive. So the fourth thing then is help. Now, I had an experience the other day where I was in my room at my surgery, and I came out and someone had trampled mud everywhere. I thought, really busy, I'm running late, I'm always running late. And so I called my next patient in, sat down, 10, 15 minutes later, out they go, and the mud was there, and it was spreading. I thought, right, this is ridiculous. So I went and found the dustpan and brush and swept the floor because it was just going to get trampled everywhere. And one of the patients stopped me. You're a doctor, you can't possibly clean the floor. Give that dustpan and brush to me. I was like, no, it's okay, it's all right. My name's Andy, I do clean floors at home and I'm going to clean floors here. My wife might argue that that's a total lie. I've just tried to make myself out look to be this great husband. I'm actually a disgrace. Well, maybe I am. But there's something, isn't there, about just rolling up your sleeves and getting the job done. And leading by example. So I can't tell you how shocking it is sometimes. Honestly, I still hear from patients of mine that sometimes in situations where, and I know how busy it is on the ward sometimes, but sometimes people don't get to eat because we don't have time to feed them, or it's not my job to feed them, I'm busy doing something else. If we don't get nutrition right, if we don't actually make sure that people are getting the goods into their body to help the healing process, and it's not a criticism, I know the reality of what we're dealing with on the wards every day and kind of what's going on, but there's something about the attitude that sometimes pervades, it's not my job, that'll be done by someone else. When we see something that needs doing, just rolling our sleeves up with that bit of humility and getting in and helping and coming alongside and asking for help when we need it as well, going, I can't do this. Really important. The next one is honour. So for every person, that no matter who you are on this team, in this hospital, so one of the things I've been thinking a lot about recently is radical hospitality. So hospitals, right? Hospitality. What would it be like if we treated every single person who came through our doors not as a target, not as a pressure, not as a someone we have to discharge as soon as possible, knowing we have to do all that stuff, but treating them like they were the most honoured guest? Like radical hospitality, that when you're in our care, you will receive the best kindness, love, attention, whatever you need. And even if you slap us in the face, and that is happening, I'm talking metaphorically, but actually the reality is that is happening all the time. Abusive staff is absolutely appalling, and we have to stand up to it and put boundaries down. It's unacceptable. But at the same time, sometimes when we get difficult attitudes from patients who are going through incredibly scary stuff, who are absolutely out of their comfort zones, who have all kinds of complexities in their life, sometimes it's very easy to answer them back with a very sharp word, rather than just turning the other cheek and saying, you know what, you treat me that way, I am gonna pile on the kindness like you have never seen before. You thought I was being kind before, I am gonna show you kindness like you have never known. What would it be like if we became the place in the country which was known for such radical hospitality, such love and care, that we were like so the standard because we just did it with such excellence, with such brilliance? I would love that, and I want that in my practice. I want that in our community teams when we go into different homes, when we go into whatever happens, we honour people for who they are and we treat them as if they were gold, as if they were royalty. Because there is no reason at all why one person should get a different level of kindness or respect or care to another person. And it happens, and it needs to not happen. We need to call that out when we see it. The next one is health. And I love the Flourish campaign, and I love what we're trying to do in the community around the 5 ways to health and well-being. We need to care for each other. We need to make sure that our staff are healthy and well. And we are sometimes working and flogging each other to a point where our own health and well-being massively suffers. There is major isolation, there are huge mental health problems, there are, doctors have the highest suicide rate of any profession. There is some stuff that we just don't know how to talk about well enough. And there's something about how we as leaders make sure that our teams every day, as part of their day, have time to be healthy and well. Whether they just get a 15-minute break for mindfulness, whether they get some chance to go walk the wards, whether we make sure that the nutrition available for staff is as good as it possibly can be, whether we're just making sure we have those spaces to connect, whether we have the stuff that helps people learn how to deal with stress, whether we take care of each other's sleep, those kind of things, because when we're not healthy and well, A, we set a terrible example, and B, we can't function or do the job. There's something about that kindness of how we treat our teams, that we take care of each other's health and well-being properly. And that's, sadly, another thing to say as leaders that we have a responsibility for. And then the last thing in terms of culture of kindness is hope. Keeping hope alive. So when we are in those long, dark tunnels and actually we can't see a way through, that there's someone who comes alongside us and puts their arm around us and says, we're going to go through this together. That no matter what we're facing in life, when we're going through really personal, difficult times, and I know what it's like to, I do a lot of mental health work, and people who really get anxious or depressed, and you literally feel so dark and in a place where you don't know a way through, someone speaking a word of hope to you in that moment and saying, I know you can't see it, but I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And if you walk with me, we're going to find a way to the end of it. The amount of depression in our staff, the amount of stress, the amount of despair that people feel is massive. And there's something about us creating that kindness in which people feel they can hold on to hope, even in the darkest places. And I think that's really important as well, especially in places like A&E, like ED, where we have massive trauma, actually, to deal with, and huge life-changing things that happen in people's lives. And we see that and we just crack on to the next patient. And there's something about pulling back together, being kind to each other and finding hope for the next day. So that's really it on kindness. Again, back into groups now, if that's okay, and just talking, what would it be like to have a culture of kindness? What's my role and responsibility in creating that, and how can I make that happen where I work?